students, good morning. Today I am going to teach you the first chapter from your supplementary book Vistas, that is the third level, written by Jack Finney. Now, before starting the chapter, as I always do, let us discuss a bit about our author Jack Finney. Who was Jack Finney? Jack Finney was born as John Finney in the year 1911 in the month of October, and he died at the age of 71 in the year 1995 November due to pneumonia. He is an American author and he is best known for his science fiction and thrillers. The story that we are going to read today is also about, science fiction regarding time travel, time loop, time holes. So this is a very interesting chapter for those who are inclined about time traveling. Recently I only watched 2 episodes from a Netflix series known as Dark. In Dark, the theme is also the same about time travel and time loop and time holes. So if anybody is interested to watch such kind of movies, can always see this movie Dark from Netflix. It's streaming in Netflix. So as you can see, our author Jack Finney, born as John Finney over here. Now let us start the story. Now, before starting the story, let us just talk about what the story is all about. As I had already told you that it is a story that weaves the psychological journey of the narrator. The narrator here is a person called Charlie into past, present and future. Okay. So now, it is a story that studies the human mind that is caught in the cycle of time. The third level. You can see in the screen that beside Jack Finney, I have written time and again. So as I told you, Jack Finney or John Finney, his most popular writing regarding time travel is Time and Again. He mainly writes about science fiction. So now let us start the chapter. The presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford railways will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only 2. But I say there are 3 because I have been to the third level of the Grand Central Station. Yes, I have taken the obvious step. So now our narrator is telling that all the station managers, the presidents of New York Central Railway Terminus and New York, New Haven and everybody, all the Hartford railroads will say that there are only 2 levels. Levels here refers to platforms, from where train leaves to different destinations. So there are only 2 levels in Grand Central Terminus at New York, but Charlie is demanding the fact that there are 3 levels in Grand Central's Terminus. Why? Because he claims that he had once went to the third level of the Grand Central Terminus and he has taken the obvious step. Why the obvious step? Obvious means that is a must step. Actually, he was being guided from one corridor to another corridor and to another corridor. So finally he reached a place, where he was transported to a different time. So he's telling it was an obvious step. Moreover, you can see that Charlie as a character is shown as such a man who was tired and all baffled up with the realities of life. He wanted to escape from the realities of life, like the fear, the warfare that was going on, and everything was so disturbing his reality that he always yearned and desired to go to a very quiet and peaceful place. He wanted to go back to such an era, such a time time when everything was harmonious and peaceful. So you can see in this story a trait of escapism. What is escapism? Escapism means when the characters in the story tend to escape from his real life, from the realities of a life, to a world which he or she thinks to be perfect and utopian state where everything is very, very good. So this is escapism or Hellenism, you can see. So escapism here also, psychologists told that Charlie wanted to escape from the realities of life. So here Charlie is demanding, is claiming that there is another level in the Grand Central Terminus at New York. So let us see, let us continue. Yes, I have taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at Grand Central Station, and he said it was a waking dream wish fulfillment. So, Charlie is telling the narrator, who is not yet introduced to us. The narrator is telling that I had also spoken about this to a psychiatrist, because everybody says that there are two levels, two stations in the Grand Central Terminus, but I have explored to the third one. So I discussed this with my psychiatrist. So why did I discuss it with a psychiatrist? Later you will see that he told, I never discussed about this idea with my psychiatrist. So basically he had a very good relationship with his wife Louisa. Probably he went back and told about this thing to Louisa. That will be confirmed later, you see. And Louisa was a very caring wife and was concerned about the fact that her husband is claiming to reach such a place which does not exist. So he went ahead and spoke to his psychiatrist. We also know this, that he was mentally ailing. That's why he was consulting a psychologist. So let us see. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at Grand Central Station, and what he told. He told, oh my God, you have explored something which does not exist. So you see, you always wanted to reach such a place away from the realities of life where it is all peaceful. So you see, you have got the door. It is a wish come true, as if a dream has come true while you are wide awake. So it is like your reverie is actual, your daydream is actual. Wow, 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 you are such a lucky person. Then he explained that, my dear friend, you are unhappy. He said, I was unhappy. That made my wife kind of mad. But he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it, and that I just want to escape. Well, who doesn't? Everybody I know wants to escape, but they don't wander down into any third level at Grand Central Station. So, as a psychologist explained this unusual thing that Charlie was telling, that he had reached the third level, the psychologist told that, the psychiatrist told that, look, I'll tell you, why did you see this? What is the reason? The reason is that you always tend to escape from the realities of your life because you are so tired with all the fear, the war, probably the First World War that was going on, and worry and tension and anxiety. You're deep at your heart, you always wanted to go to such a place where it is all peaceful and harmonious. Probably that instinct, that yearning of yours took you to the third level. The third level is a way out, an exit to a different world that you had always wanted. A peaceful, loving, harmonious world. So that is the explanation. Actually, it is what your heart desired, it is what your heart wanted, and you felt, you went to the third level. It's not real. So it's your imagination, it's your psychological journey to a place from where you can go out of this torturing world. The psychiatrist explained it to him in relations to science regarding the existence of a third level in the Grand Central Terminus. But that is the reason, he said, and my friends all agreed. Everything points to it, they claimed. My stamp collecting, for example, that is a temporary refuge. As you can see, refuge means relief from the reality. Well, maybe. But my grandfather did not need any refuge from reality. Things were pretty nice and peaceful for him. So you see, he is telling all his friends agreed with the psychiatrist that he was very, very exhausted and tired with the modern world, and he wanted to get himself transported to such a world where it was all peaceful and loving and utopian state. So everybody agreed. And even the doctor told, the friends told, look, you are always doing this hobby of yours of stamp collecting. That is, that is also a method of relief from the realities of life, the tough, cruel realities of life that is going on. Your stamp collecting, that is also a proof that you want to go away from the realities of life. And what did the narrator say? What did the narrator say? He told that, well, maybe, I don't know, because my grandfather also had this hobby of stamp collecting, and during his time there probably was no war, nothing. So how can one say that stamp collection is a method to take refuge from the realities of life, the harsh realities of life? I had inherited this hobby of stamp collection from my grandfather. So now let us see next page. So there was probably no war during his days, from all I hear, and he started my collection. It is a nice collection too, blocks of 4 of practically every US issue. What is US issue? Issue is the issuing of a new stamp. First day covers the stamp when it comes first, and it is used on the envelope and sent to somebody. So the first day covers, the US issues, everything my grandfather collected. And if stamp collecting is a method to go away from the harsh realities of life, then my grandfather did it too. But during his time, there was no worries or tensions. So I don't understand whether stamp collecting points or signifies to a troubled mind and to search for a way to escape the harsh realities. Even President Roosevelt collected stamps, So now, anyway, here is what happened at Grand Central Terminus. What happened? Let us see. How did he get to find the third level? One night last summer, I worked late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment, so I decided to take the subway from Grand Central because it's faster than the bus. So one summer, he was working late, and finally he wanted to go back to his wife Louisa. He wanted to go back to his wife. I have already told you that he shared a very good relationship, a loving relationship with his wife, and instead of taking the bus, which takes a longer time, he took the subway of the Grand Central Railway Terminus, which had several and numerous subways that ended up in different places, in different streets and roads, and in different destinations. So he took one such subway on one summer night in order to reach his home fast. Now, I don't know why this should have happened to me. I'm just an ordinary guy named Charlie, 31 years old, and I was wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. What is gabardine? What is gabardine? You see, it's written gabardine. It is a tough tightly woven fabric. So I was wearing a tan colored gabardine suit, and I was wearing a very fancy hat worn during modern days, the then modern days according to him, with a fancy band around. I passed a dozen men who looked just like me, and I was not trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to Louisa, my wife. Now he is explaining what happened to him and how did he reach the Grand Central Terminus's the third level. Okay, so he was wearing a tan gabardine suit that day, and he wanted to reach to his wife faster, so he did not take a bus probably, and he took a subway in the Grand Central Terminus in order to reach his wife Louisa fast. I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level, where you take trains like the 20th century. So what does he mean by this? Where do you take trains like the 20th century? 20th century was a modern century, right? 1900th century. Like, people in the first level are all in a hurry. They're busy. They're modern-minded people. And the trains leave to towns and metros and cities from the first level. It is like the main line of our stations. So all the metro people, the smarty people take this route in the first level, because the trains leave from the first level to modern towns and cities and metros. So all the people are modern minded, are in a hurry. Nobody has time to look to each other, so everybody is just hurrying and rushing to take the train. Now, then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from, ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway, and got lost. That's easy to do. I have been in and out of Grand Central hundreds of times, but I'm always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. You see, the author is telling, and the second level, the trains to suburban areas and rural areas and countryside leave from the second level. So people here are like normal. Their pace is a bit slower than the people of the first level. So it is normal. It's like the place where ordinary people like Charlie travel. And now Charlie is telling the Grand Central Terminus is so very huge that nobody is able to explore the whole railway terminus in his lifetime. You never know. Suddenly you may encounter a new corridor or a new part or a new tunnel that takes you to a new destination. So he means to say that the terminus is so huge. So what happens? That's easy to do. I have been in the Grand Central Terminus hundreds of times, but still Charlie is unable to comprehend that how many doorways and stairs and corridors and tunnels are there in that railway terminus. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time I came up in an office building on 46th Street 3 blocks away. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases. Staircases like, just a minute, I missed the page. Like trees. Okay, so you see, the author is telling that GCT, Grand Central Terminus, is like a tree, a huge tree who is growing each and every day, spreading its branches and twigs and stems and roots underneath that you are unable to comprehend. A mammoth tree. So you see, GCT is being compared to trees. The figure of speech, simile. So Grand Central Terminus is huge. I'm always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. Why? Because it's so huge. Terminus, nobody can explore it fully. There is probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about, feeling its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square, and maybe another to Central Park, and maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the mind I got into, the tunnel I got into. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. You see, he's telling, I never disclosed about this idea, of reaching the third level from the Grand Central Terminus, though I discussed it with my wife that one day I found the third level in Grand Central Terminus. Here, idea means his way of escaping to a different world through the Grand Central Terminus, the third level. He only told and discussed with his doctor friend about the third level, but not the idea that third level can take him to somewhere. He believed that Grand Central Terminus was so huge that it was growing each and every day like a tree, spreading its roots underneath the soil. One cannot comprehend, one cannot conjecture. So it is huge, huge. And he believes that it may take people to any destination. And this belief that it may help him to an escape from the world he is living in made him to take the obvious step of delving deep into something, and that is how he reached the third level. Now, before proceeding, let me show you a picture of Grand Central Terminus. Wait, I cannot see the picture of the Grand Central Terminus. Just a minute. Now look, this is the Grand Central Terminus. You see, it's huge. It is just a picture. Wow. Look, it is at New York. And its corridors, I also saved a picture. Look, the corridors leading to two different ways in Grand Central. Just a single spot. So there are several, innumerable number of corridors. There are numerous such corridors and tunnels, and you take one way and it will lead you to another way, probably to two more tunnels, and then you take that one tunnel and you reach to some other place. So look how way leads on to ways. So there are numerous such corridors and tunnels in Grand Central Terminus and New York, which is itself a specimen of a railway station. Now, let me continue. The corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong. Suddenly I got an idea. I'm only going to left and going downwards, but I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps. There was no one about apart from Charlie, the narrator of our story. He reached the first level, he went on to the second level, and he went on walking by a tunnel, through a tunnel, and he was going left and slanting downwards. He was the only one, and I did not pass a soul. Then I heard that sort of hollow roar ahead. That means open space and people talking. Suddenly I felt that I was getting light, and that air which showed that I was going to an open space. And people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the third level at Grand Central Station. So look how big it is that you never know where you end. And he reached a place that was quite different from the year was he living in, the time he was living in, and the first level and the second level. It was quite different, the place he came to. An open space and people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left, and I went down to a short flight of stairs on the third level of Grand Central Station. For just a moment I thought I was back on the second level, but I saw some difference. Number one, the room was smaller. The ticket room was smaller than that of the first level and the second level. There were fewer ticket windows and train gates, so fewer trains depart from there. And the information booth in the center was wood and old-fashioned. So you see, ticket booths were made of wood. They were smaller and they were old-fashioned. And the man was also attired and dressed in old-fashioned way. And the man in the booth wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. The lights were dim and soft. The lights were hazy and flickering. They were not like steady. They were flickering. The lights were dim. Then he saw why. Because they were open flame gas lights. So gaslight bulbs were used during the old days, like that of the old days. The man in the booth was also dressed in an unusual way that was old-fashioned. Now let's see. There were brass spittoons. What are spittoons? Spittoons, look, I have written the meaning. An earthen pot used in previous days. Jack আমরা বলি ঘোড়া. You know, there were brass spittoons on the floor and across the station. A glint of light caught my eye. What did he see? A man who was again dressed in an old-fashioned way. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. So it was a pocket watch. Men during his days started using wristwatch by that time in 1900. But here the man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch and frowned and kept it back. His dress was also unusual from that people wear or men wear during his time in the 1900s. He wore a derby hat, a black 4-button suit with many lapels, and he had a big black handlebar moustache. He had a big black moustache. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 1890 something. American people all dressed in old-fashioned American style, as if he was transported to some other age, maybe 1890. I never saw so many beards and sideburns and fancy moustaches of men in my entire life. A woman walked in through the train gate. She wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high-buttoned shoes. Back of her, out on the tracks, I caught a glimpse of a locomotive, a very small Currier and Eves locomotive with a funnel-shaped stack, and then I knew. Then what did he see? He saw a lady dressed in an old-fashioned way, wearing a gown and a skirt with leg of mutton sleeves. What is leg of mutton sleeves? Wait, I'll show you. Leg of mutton sleeves. Look. It looks like the leg of a mutton or a chicken. Leg of mutton sleeve dress. This was popular during the 1800s. The 1800s. You see? This kind of a dress. So a woman was wearing such a decorative dress. That was again unusual of his age. And then he saw a train in the station that was, you know, like that of the picture of a Currier and Eves locomotive. Currier and Eves was a very famous printing company in the years 1830s or 1840s to 1880s or 90s maybe. So the kind of a picture of a train printed by this company, the train that he saw was exactly similar. An old-aged, old-fashioned train. You see this kind of a train. Currier and Eves print a picture of a train or a locomotive. You see, this is an old-age train. Ran by, coal. It refers to this kind of an engine used during late 1800. So he told, I saw a train that was quite different. I saw people who were differently dressed. I saw people who were differently styled. I saw places and things that were differently styled and outdated. So he realized. What did he do then? To make sure, he was sure that I had time traveled to past from present. To make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. It was the World. And the World was such a newspaper that was obsolete by the time Charlie was born. And the World has not been published for years. The lead story said something about President Cleveland. And I have found the front page since in the public library files, and it was printed on the newspaper June 11th, 1894. So you see, Charlie had time traveled to 1894 through a tunnel in the 3rd level. Everything was different from that Charlie was accustomed to see. Outdated people, outdated place, outdated fashion, outdated style, outdated structures. But Charlie was happy. Charlie is a mouthpiece, of our author's scientific and curious mind. Charlie is a representative of the modern man who was so very depressed with his mere existence amidst fear, war, anxiety, depression, that he always wanted to go to a place where everything was good, to the good old days. So you see, he was so happy. Let us see what happens after this.